Welcome to today's prayer perspective. Following the Berchot HaShachar and the Akedah, we enter into a section of the pre-Psukei de Zimra known as the Korbanot, as the various psukim, the verses from the Torah, and also from Chazal, which describe the daily sacrifice and also the incense offerings in the Beit HaMikdash. It is a custom to recite these passages every day, but Chazal did not officially institute this practice, and therefore it's not considered an absolute obligation. And yet there is a basis for it. And that basis is taught both in the Gemara and Tanit, and Daf Chav Zayin and Bet, and Megillah, and Daf Lamed Aleph and Bet, that when God entered into a covenant with Avraham Avinu and promised that he and his children would inherit the land of Israel, Avraham Avinu asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, maybe God forbid the nation of Israel will sin, and you'll do to them as you did to the generation of the flood. God answered, I won't do that to them. But how will I know that you won't destroy them? Asked Avraham. Said HaKadosh Baruch Hu, bring me 3 calves. And with that, he hinted to him that the institution of the Korbanot would be the witness to the eternal connection between Israel and Hashem. But then Avraham Avinu said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, and what will be when the Beit HaMikdash will be destroyed? How will their sins be atoned? How will I know you will keep this covenant of the Jewish people? Said HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I've already instituted the daily recitation of the sections of Korbanot in their tefillah. Every time they recite Korbanot, I'll consider it as if they are bringing an offering before me, and I'll forgive them for all of their sins. Explain the Chazal that there are 3 different ways we can worship God. One is with deed. The second is with words, and the third is with thoughts. When we can no longer do the deed of bringing a korban, at the very least, we can read those words and we can think about them and keep the korbanot as best as possible. And yet there's one more thought, and that is that when we think of the korbanot, there are 4 stages. In tefillah, we begin when we wake up, when a person all of a sudden is submerged in his physical being, and first he has to wake up and sacrifice his soul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by reciting the korbanot. Next, a person purifies his soul through the Psukei de Zimra with songs and praises of God. From there, that person can accept upon himself the Ol Malchut Shamayim, the yoke of heaven, through Shema. And finally, a person is able to rise to the highest level of prayer, standing before the Master of the universe in the Amidah, where he praises and pleads and gives thanks to God. And that way, Korbanot is a continuation of the initial Berchot HaShachar, when we move from a stage of sleeping into a stage of being aware of all that we must do and all that we can do to bring us closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu.